You are now listening to You Heard. On this week's episode of You Heard, we are joined by Kerlyn Rodriguez, who dives deep into what it means to be a first-generation student of immigrant parents. So first generation means the first person in your family to go to college, at least in regards to higher education's terms. And she begins to detail how early the pressure of going to college started and what that looked like for her childhood in high school and the other responsibilities that came along with just being a child of immigrants, on top of the desire and push to go to an extremely well-rounded, well-known university for college. Hey everyone, on this episode of You Heard, we have the beautiful, intelligent, and amazing Kerlyn Rodriguez. Introduce yourself.
Kerlyn Rodriguez, RNBSN. And if you hear squawking in the background, that's my birdie, Benito.
And he has his own Instagram, so we'll put that plug in the episode as well, because everybody should follow this beautiful bird. So I know that we have a super interesting topic today, so I'm going to let you introduce it and talk about some of the points that we're going to bring up, and then we can go ahead and dive in.
Today we're going to talk about just being a first generation student and just parents of being a child of an immigrant, and how adulting's just going for me right now. I started taking my education pretty serious around when I was like 11. No choice of my own, of course, but
Yeah.
This is the future my parents wanted for me. They always emphasized education, and that's the only way you're going to be able to make it in America is if you have education. If you don't have that, then it's kind of like slim pickings for jobs, etc. So when I was like 11, there was this program in Germantown in Philly, which if anybody's from Philly, they know Germantown's not the best part of town. But this nun ran a program for students of color, and she really wanted us to go to private high schools and private colleges that we can have the same opportunities as white people. And so since the 6th grade, I've been in school, after school programs, summer camps, Saturday school, all of those things, just to be able to get the opportunity to go to a private high school, private college, sacrificing definitely childhood and being able to be on sports teams or do any other extracurricular activities, just to have the same opportunity as white people.
Right. And so what were the benefits of that and how it, got you to the university that you and I ended up meeting at? So talk a little bit about that journey, being pushed into taking your academics so seriously at such a young age. You're in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and how that has gotten you to where you are today and how that kind of plays a role in you adulting now.
Before I / to Philly, I always went to public school. And I went to public school for about 2 years, which is where I met, your baby's father / boyfriend, Josh. I met him there in our public school, and I hated Philly's public school so much. I was begging my mom, please, can I go to the Catholic school that my cousins go to? That's where it kind of started, and that's where I had got the offer, me and my family, because all of us went, all my siblings and I went to this program called Indwelling, run by this nun, Sister Rosemary, and Brother Al, which was it's honestly a fantastic program, but at such a young age, you're not going to appreciate it.
Yeah, it sounds super intense.
What it is. Yeah, it is super intense because they ask so much of you at such a young age, and honestly, you don't understand how to appreciate it until you're much older.
Right.
Because at that age, all you want to do is go home after school.
Yeah.
And live your own life, even though you're only 11.
Yeah.
But after school, we would go for 2 hours and we would do our homework. And then once we got into 7th and 8th grade, we would do these thing called HSPT prep, which is a high school placement test. If you wanted to go to private high school in Philly, you had to take a high school placement test in order to get accepted. kind of like the SATs of grade school, basically.
Yeah, we had something similar in New York, so I'm familiar with that stress.
Yeah, exactly. We had to take those, and for 2 years we're prepping. In grade school, you had to go to the program 4 days a week. When you were in 7th and 8th grade, on Saturdays, you would go to Saturday school. And I just so happened to go to the high school, and the girls would go to Marian Mercy, and the boys would go to LaSalle College High School. And that's actually the high school that I ended up going to. You're prepping and prepping and prepping for like 2 years, and there's these amazing mentors. You know, there are people that are college professors at these prestigious universities who volunteer their time. Then you do SAT prep. So it's like, and it's never ending. And in the summertime, we also get put into these summer camps, whether it's like for writing or math or medicine and stuff like that, just to get our interest into different things. And so you're also giving up your summer because these programs don't end until like the end of July. And so
Right.
school, of course, in Philly starts in some of them starts like at the end of August, September. So you're not really having your whole summer off. You're having it just, again, dedicated to education. But like I said, it's kind of hard to appreciate those things when you're that young and not being able to, like, let's say, go on vacation or do any of those things that you probably want to do as such a young kid.
I know, like, I started looking at colleges when I was in the 7th grade. So my mom, you know, single mom. Yeah. It's like, she made it very clear to me, like, listen, I didn't take school seriously. I didn't have any pushing me. That's not going to be your reality. You're going to college. You're going to make like the best out of your education. You're going to work really hard. And I remember, so my mom was super strict when it came to my academics. Like, she created this Excel sheet schedule that I had to abide by every single day. That was like, you know, eat breakfast, go to school, come back from school, do your homework, do your workbooks, study, etc., go to sleep. And I like had to do that. So I remember being in like 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, and having to do workbooks after homework in order to prepare me for like state tests and all of these other kinds of things. And then of course, when you're in middle school, so in order to get into Catholic school in New York, you have to take something called the tax exam. So I remember having to like study for the tax exam, and I applied to both public school and Catholic school. And I've done both. I've done public, I've done Catholic. But I remember from like a very early age of like, I'm going to college, you know, I want to study X, Y, and Z. I want to, you know, make sure that I'm going to a good university, that I'm getting scholarships and all this other stuff. And like you, by the time that I got to high school, you know, you didn't really have time to be a part of the like extracurricular activities. I wasn't in sports. I did do martial arts, but I was also in like all of these college prep programs. So I used to do a program with Columbia University. It was called Double Discovery. And it was for like low income students of color to have access to SAT prep and PSAT prep for free. Because we all know those, you know, prep things are like $3,000, $5,000, and you only do it for like 6 weeks. But this was something that you had to do like the whole year. So you were going in the summer, you were going in the school year. And during the school year, you had to go twice a week. So every Friday was just kind of like, let's work on your resume. Let's work on your interview skills. Let's work on your college applications and your essays. And then on the weekends, similar to like what you did, we would have classes for like writing or science and like trying to figure out what you're interested in. So I took like a bunch of creative writing classes, and that was really fun. And then we also had like the SAT prep part where we would like sit there and like do the SAT booklet every single weekend. And first of all, I lived in Queens, and this is like all the way up like uptown in Manhattan. So I used to travel like in high school every single day super early to get there at like 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and just like be there until like 3 or 4. And my sister ended up doing it too. So I know that like by the time I got out of college and have done all of these things, I was hella exhausted. So I don't know if that was your experience as well.
Honestly, I don't know how I used to do it, but we used to wake up so early for school. Like, so we used to live in North Philly, like by Frankfurt Terminal Station.
Yeah.
And when we then moved to the bodega that my dad had, and we lived on top, and it was in West Philly. So we went to school in North Philly, but we lived in West Philly, and we would get up at 5:30 in the morning. And I don't know how I used to do that.
Yeah.
We would wake up at 5:30, and the four of us would go with my dad, and we'd have to do like the compras for the bodega, like the shopping for the
Mm-hmm.
store.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would go to school, and I'm like, yo, I can't do that. Because he would
Yeah.
drive us, because we were still too young to like um take the train. And
Right.
then after that only lasted for a while. Then we started just taking the train all by ourselves.
And how old are you in sixth grade? We're like 10 or 11 at that point, and you're
Yeah, 11, yeah.
managing public transportation by yourself at 11 years old, usually with your younger
Yeah.
siblings, I'm assuming, because I know that that was my
Yeah.
case.
So
Yeah,
I had
we
my
were.
twin sister
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
my older brother who was just 2.5 years older than me. The three of us were 11, like 12, and then my little brother was 10. We would walk all together to school, the three of us.
Yeah, the whole pack. No,
The whole
please, I was
pack,
the same
a
exact,
little wolf
literally the
pack.
whole pack of the Rodriguez family. I think it's so cute. I was the same way. My sister and I are 10 years apart, and she went to the like daycare that was 2 blocks away from the like elementary middle school that I went to back in Manhattan. So again, we lived in Queens. So like you, we were up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock just to get from Queens to Manhattan. And
Yeah.
so my mom would drop my sister off at daycare, and then I would leave them and go to school. So I would walk those extra blocks. But after school, I was in charge of picking up my sister from daycare. And then she was old enough at that point in time to be in tutoring, and I was also in tutoring. So we would have to go all the way uptown to go to tutoring I think it was like every Wednesday or something. So I'm like traveling with this little, 4-year-old going to tutoring after school. I'm like 13 years old and just all over the train, all over New York City. We were like hopping boroughs all the time. And again, it was because we had to take academics really seriously. Like my sister was literally in tutoring at like 3, 4 years old because my mom was like, nope, got to take this seriously. We need to make sure she's ahead. So I get it.
That's weird for me because it's just like, oh my God, so young, so young. I would get like a maybe kindergartner or something like that, 2 or 3.
But look where we got,
I
we
know,
both,
exactly. Our
yeah.
parents literally sacrificed so much. And I feel like that goes into just us taking all of this so seriously. In high school, I went to Marian Mercy Academy, which was a PWI. And I never really noticed what that meant until I went to Villanova. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I knew what I was around, but I just really didn't have the name for it. And then I didn't.
It slaps you in the face.
Yeah, you didn't take it. I didn't understand it really until after I graduated, when I was probably like a sophomore and stuff. So every year, we had to write ourselves a letter, and then when we were seniors, we got to read our letters to ourselves, which was, I love those traditions that honestly that I had at that school.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt discriminated against while I was there, and
Good.
I mean, it could be because I was like a white Latina, and I'm not, I didn't feel any prejudice against any, like myself, anybody, or until actually I went to Villanova, then I saw how those girls were like definitely not who I thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the 2016 election, and I'm like, oh, definitely while I was in the school, I didn't feel that at all, and I felt very much a part of the school and their traditions and stuff. I did love. I could honestly, but I did know that we were different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, I did know that being very like white and privileged was different than being, first generation Dominican, there on scholarship, having to take 3 buses just to get there.
Right.
Not being able to afford to go to the dances or to like get a new dress every time to go. And I almost didn't go to prom because it was so expensive. If it wasn't for like one of my best friends at the school, her mom like paid for my prom ticket, and my mom's friend who paid for my dress and my shoes and stuff, I wouldn't have gone. And I mean, I would have understood, but I also would have like taken a memory from me just because of how expensive it was to honestly go. And you had to go with a date or else you weren't allowed to go, which I think was dumb.
Yeah.
I went with my brother because I'm like, I'm not going to take anybody that I don't know.
Right. Right.
Also, I didn't want like a pariguayo that was going to sit down all night. Like, and not do anything at all. But definitely those experiences, I knew I was different than everybody else, but also I enjoyed not feeling it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But when I read my letters my senior year, I could tell how my first 2 years there, I was struggling through that.
Got you.
Like I was struggling feeling happy there, and I was struggling like, I don't know, maybe seeing that I didn't have as much money as the other girls and all those things, and what did that mean, and having at that point in high school, like after probably I was a sophomore and stuff, I started working at the bodega. So
Mm-hmm.
my parents had the corner store like 2 3 minutes away from our house,
Okay.
and I always had to work there on the weekends all the time. Which when we had first moved into town, I was like, yeah, like I always wanted to work there. And it was weird because my brothers never worked there, and like they're
Mm-hmm.
the so-called men of the house, and my dad always wanted them to like take pride in it and like be excited to work there, but neither of them were. And me and my sister were actually like, what we say, like la matatanas, like we were like
Mm-hmm.
OGs, like running the store basically, and excited until it took all of our weekends away.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, my family calls like me and my sister like Nana. So
Mm-hmm.
they'd be like, oh, la nanas, like they can run the store, like they could like just stay there. So we ended up missing, like, not only in high school, like did we miss um a lot of some of the events because of our after school program, but then on our
Right.
weekends we ended up missing a lot of family events because that was the only time that my parents would take off, because they would leave us in charge of the store.
Right. Yeah. So you felt obligated because it gives your
Oh
parents.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It was a guilt thing because it was just like,
Yeah.
okay, if I don't work, that means Papi doesn't get a day off.
Right.
So it definitely felt guilty, and also was a jip because they would give you like so much less money than the people that they paid. $4 an hour probably is what I was getting.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
was like, all right. Like for working there for like a whole shift, my dad would totally give me just like $60. And it was better. And then me at that
Thanks,
age, I'm
Dad.
like, me at my age, I'm thinking like, well, it's better than nothing. Like it's better
True.
than nothing. But I'm sure if I
Yeah.
worked at Walgreens, I could get a better wage than that.
But I'm sure your parents appreciated it in the long run.
Oh no, they appreciate. Yeah, they definitely appreciated it. But it was just so tiring and stuff that, I mean,
Yeah.
like a bodega shift is like 14 hours. You
Absolutely.
go open and then you close. Like from open to close, you're really there for like, get there at
Hmm.
7, you lock up at 9. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and being there even probably earlier just to like restock and clean up and all that other stuff. There's so much that's taken into account besides just like opening and closing.
Yeah, exactly. So it would
Mm-hmm.
be like me and my sister together. We would take turns. One of us would be like at the door, kind of like the person that's, you ever seen someone, but they are just like sitting around,
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah. Mm-hmm.
security or like stock person, and then one of us would be like behind the register.
I know where our differences and experiences happened before we actually got to Villanova,
Yeah.
PWI, so on and so forth. So the high school that I went to, I also went to an all-girls Catholic high school. It was not a PWI. It was definitely like a mixed bag of students. We had, your kids that came from money, but you also had your kids that didn't come from money. And it was extremely diverse. I would say probably the smallest population of students that were at our school were maybe the Asian students. But
Mhm.
still, we had like a pretty good mixed bag of, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, so on and so forth. So me going to Villanova was like a huge culture shock because I've never been to a school where like 98% of the students were upper middle class or just upper class in general. I know, I think the last time that I looked at the demographics, it's like 70% of the student body comes from a household that makes more than $110,000 a year, which like that kind of math and that kind of household income is not something that I ever grew up with or anybody in
I
my
know, right?
yeah, right. Yeah. Like, wow, I would like to make that kind of money now.
Right,
It's just,
exactly.
and it's like, nobody that I grew up with came from that kind of household either, whether they had two parents, one parent, whatever it was, like that definitely wasn't a reality that I was used to. So I think there was a lot more of an adjustment for me to make because of that culture shock. In particular with socioeconomic status, that I had to kind of get through when it came to Villanova. And I know that resulted in a very, very, very different experience based on what you were telling me about your experience at Villanova. That was a lot more, I guess you could say, negative in how I kind of internalized my time at Nova versus kind of what you experienced and what you engaged yourself in while you were at
Yeah.
Villanova. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so after like high school and stuff, I honestly didn't pick Villanova until my senior year, which is crazy to me because of how much I ended up loving it there. That sister I told you about, the that was at the after school program, she was
Mm-hmm.
showing me Villanova and stuff, and I had an interview with Dr. Nance and everything when I was a senior in high school.
I love her. Yeah.
And that she was still at it was the Multicultural Affair office at that
Mm-hmm.
point,
Mm-hmm.
and she was still the director. Now Mrs. Coleman is, but at that
Yes.
time it was Dr. Nance, and so I had an interview with her, and it was great. Like I was like so in love with it after my interview with her. So I feel like that is what made me like feel so welcome, that I had
Mm-hmm.
that, I had an interview with Dr. Nance, and I like loved the campus and stuff, and so I felt I could fit in because I had already was introduced to people who look like me, had experiences
Right.
like me, and so it was, um I didn't feel, I mean, like I said, my high school was a PWI, so
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't completely shocked when I didn't see anyone who looked like me because I already went through 4 years of that.
Right.
Being the
Right.
only, me and my sister being the only Hispanic students in our whole class. Yeah, it was just literally us two. That's it.
Mm.
But our class was 114 girls, and we knew everybody's name. Probably within the whole school, I think there was probably only like 5 or 6 of us total. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like it was that much of a difference. And honestly, if I didn't have a twin sister, it probably would have just been me.
Yeah, damn. Yeah. And just to preface, so Dr. Nance, I'm familiar with her as well. I've taken class with her. She was probably one of the first professors that I met that like wasn't my professor at that time. Just because I knew a couple of people ahead of time at Villanova who were able to kind of plug me into places. So Dr. Nance is this amazing African American professor that is at Villanova. And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you may know this information. Is it true that she was the first African American professor at Villanova? I feel like I heard that from somewhere, but I don't want to misquote information.
I'm not 100% on that, but I think so. I think
Yeah,
so.
but
I feel like
and
that sounds correct, but I don't want to,
exactly.
like you, I don't want to say it and then it not be right.
So
But
I
she's
wouldn't
if
be
she's not the
surprised.
first, if she's not the first, she's one of the first.
Exactly. And let's just like put it out there that like Kerlyn and I are class of 2016, and like the Dr. Nance is like very much alive and kicking. She is an ancient. So that means that, she came to Villanova not too long ago to kind of give perspective on like what not only the student body looks like, but also the faculty and staff themselves. To sit
Yes.
here and say that like we can have an intimate relationship with either the first or one of the first African American faculty members at the university.
Exactly. And I felt having someone that is higher up believe in you and kind of like,
Yeah.
push you forward and stuff was so great, which is why that when I went to the, again, always going to summer camps and stuff,
Yes.
going to the pre summer camp for Villanova AAP Academic
Mm-hmm.
Advancement Program, which helped you just place you and like give you a push to see like what could you expect going into like a college like that. I was already, since I had already went to a private high school and had taken like college preparatory courses and advanced courses at that school, I wasn't in like academically wasn't shocking my classes and stuff, but some students
Right.
from high school who go there, like it could be very different from a public school towards a private Catholic college like Villanova. So I definitely took my experience there like very seriously, and I also like just enjoyed making friends over the summer, getting to campus before all the other freshmen. I think that was one of the most amazing things ever, is that like I already knew my way around on the first day. Literally
Yeah.
orientation day, all I did was go look for my friends that I made at AAP. My parents left after like an hour, like, and I knew that was gonna happen. Like they're not the type of parents that are going to stay at a hotel. Like a lot of students,
Yeah.
parents go to stay at the like Radnor Inn or whatever, like
Oh gosh, yeah.
just for the weekend, even if they like
Mm-hmm.
live right there. I just found that normal. Like anyone else would be
Right.
like, "Where's your parents?" I'm like, "Oh, they're just have better
They're
things to
home.
do. They have
Yeah.
work." Also, my sister and I decided to go to separate colleges.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very much felt like I'm there on my own, but I'm here. Like I'm about to do this. It's about to
Yeah.
be my college experience. So it was 100% worth it, that summer camp to me. And then because of AAP, like they do the mentorship throughout the 4 years, have those meetings biweekly with
Yeah.
your mentor and your guide basically for the 4 years. It really helped. For me, it didn't make me feel isolated, and it wasn't a constant reminder that, oh, people like around here don't look like me. And for me, it
Mm-hmm.
just helped me feel safe. It helped me feel like I had a place to vent. And honestly, their requirements aren't a lot. Some people are like, oh, I have to go do this thing. For me, it's like I was excited to go do it because then I got to see my classmates that year for AAP. Like I got to see my friends. If I hadn't already had been hanging out with them, I got to see them. I got to see upperclassmen, and they were always so great with their knowledge and experiences and stuff. So I don't know. For me, I just saw it as like an amazing opportunity, and it was one of the best, to be doing it for the whole 4 years, and then also be a mentor to the new incoming AAP classes. I loved being a part
Yeah.
of that.
I would say that my entrance into Villanova wasn't as intimate. It definitely had its moments. So I was familiar with Villanova because I did a leadership program way back when at that university. And again, I had some friends that I knew that went there that I was like, okay, well, you're cool. You seem really smart. And I know that this is a good institution, so I should definitely apply. And this is going to be the university that I go to. And happily, I got in. But I was recruited slash interviewed, if you want to call it an interview, by Dr. Dorley, who is awesome. I love him to death. Like that, he definitely made Villanova a lot more bearable, and I bothered him enough in his office to make sure that that was a thing. But you know, your interview with Dr. Nance, again, you know that there's like people on campus that look like you and that you can go to. Again, Dr. Nance is like you know, this amazing African American woman with this infectious energy. Dr. Dorley is a white guy. So, you know, he was just kind of like, here I am coming to, you know, the tri-state area, recruiting Latino students from Catholic schools within the tri-state area, and kind of created the community that way. And, you know, he works very hard and checks his privilege all the time to make sure that we feel comfortable, worked hard to create a community out of the students that he did recruit. And though he didn't have something as formal as like you would meet every other week or every 2 weeks, and that there were mentors and all of this other stuff, but he did like twice a semester try to get all of the students that he recruited together to meet the new ones, to meet the old ones. You know, whether the student maybe possibly went to like grad school after doing their bachelor's at Villanova, pull them in. We would have like end of semester dinners as well. He did a lot of stuff for the seniors, and his office, because he's the head of the ethics department, was always an open door. But again, it was this like very different um introduction to Villanova's faculty. Like my community and my introduction was run by a white guy versus like your interview was with, you know, the amazing Dr. Nance.
Yeah.
And she's like famous at Villanova. So it was definitely different. And like how you said, your experience through like AAP and being a mentor and working with that particular office. So I knew of that office, but I definitely wasn't as involved with the multicultural students office as much as I guess I should have been. Just because they weren't introduced to me until later on. And that was when I was like, oh, okay, now I know charisma, but I am a junior in college and I'm going to study abroad next year. And then I'm a senior and I don't even live on campus anymore. So I didn't really get exposed to that community and that faculty and staff and those people until a lot later. And a lot of them I met because I ended up joining a multicultural sorority. And they were like the advisors of the sorority and fraternities in like the multicultural Greek life. So it kind of just like happened by chance versus like that being the first community that welcomed me when I came to Villanova or was like interviewing for
Yeah.
them or learning about Villanova. So it was very, very
It
different.
makes a difference, honestly. From the beginning, I had already felt like I had a space where I could go to feel
Absolutely.
safe, to vent if anything ever happened. And I feel like that is important if you're a low income student of color. I think it's important
Yes.
to have those conversations of people that live in your dorm are going to say things that you never heard in your life. And they're going to have
Yo.
things that they're also going to have things that you don't feel like it's necessary to have, and or never can have or can't afford to get, and you don't feel like you have to be obligated to get Sperry's and get nice sweaters and get all
Oh,
these nice
yeah.
things and have to have like um the newest best winter coat or whatever it is.
Yo. Yes. Faculty as well. And some of the side-handed comments that they would make towards the, I guess, quote unquote underprivileged or urban students or students of color, because we honestly we stuck out like sore thumbs in those damn classes. So I think, at least for me, for some of the classes that I've taken, and I don't know if it was like that for you in the nursing college, but for me in communication, not really the communication department, but for any of the professors that were teaching the core classes we had to take, there was some stuff that I was just kind of like, I'm not comfortable with like what you're calling out from me, or like the comments that you're making, whether it be towards me or towards, the students of color that are in the room. So it was quite an experience. I love Villanova, don't get me wrong, but it was definitely a a whirlwind trying to navigate that community for 4 years.
Yeah, I feel like if you find your group and you find your safe
Mm-hmm.
space, you will survive. That's what I felt.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
Yeah.
even in the nursing school, like I didn't feel uncomfortable because I was friends with, or I made myself accommodated with people in the offices, all the different
Mm-hmm.
offices
Mm-hmm.
in the nursing school. Like everybody knew me, and everybody was just so welcoming to me. Or like I would get like tutoring done with Patty Abdallah, who I love so much. She's
Mm-hmm.
no longer there, but she was like one of my best mentors at the nursing school. And she
Awesome.
helped me with Dr. Archimon as well. Like, so I just knew people like that were higher up, and I would always be that
Yeah.
person to like introduce myself to my professors and stuff, and so they would know who I am. And like I made sure that I took up space. Like I was that student for very much that knew like these are my opportunities here. I wanted to make these 4 years the best 4 years ever, and academically wise, definitely not party wise, but definitely
Yeah.
academic wise, I took those opportunities as they came. Like
Yeah.
I
And you're
was
in like Villanova magazines and everything. So yes, you absolutely took up space.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely like I made sure if I wanted to study abroad, like I was doing that. Like I find out how much, and I did it all on like by myself, like without the help of my
Right.
parents and stuff. Like I told them, hey,
Mm-hmm.
like this is what I want to do, and they were like, well, we can't afford that. And I was like, don't worry about it. Like I was like, I'm gonna find a way to do this. And they were like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Like they did not take me seriously when I said I wanted to go to England for 11 months, and they were just like, yeah, all right.
And you did.
I did, yes. When I then once it became a real thing, they were like, oh, are you actually? They were like, you're actually gonna go do that? And I'm like, yes. I was like, yes.
Bye.
Like from November, like of my freshman year. So like literally, I'm a freshman, just 3 months
Mm-hmm.
into school already. I'm like, yeah, I'm about to be out next year. It was all a great experience.
He's making sure that he gets his words in as
Yeah,
well for that.
Benito.
So
Benito. Yeah, he's so loud. He's taking up space too.
absolutely, absolutely. Speak it into existence, Benito. But yes, I think it's awesome that you took up space. Honestly, I'm 100% going to admit that I was so in my head about like the trying to like navigate this new community that I completely just wasn't prepared for, that I didn't take up space. Like I took space up in my own damn head.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, I guess my professors knew who I was because I was always very outspoken. I participated a lot in class
Yeah.
because I cared about what I was learning about, and I did love a lot of my professors. Like the only reason why I was a communication major was because I felt like the best faculty that I met on campus all worked in that department, which included Dr. Nance and like Dr. Hall and Dr. Bowen, Dr. Amy, like all of them. There were so many of them that I was like, I am absolutely in love with every single one of these professors. My favorite, Dr. Moore, which is actually Dr. Nance's husband. They were just popping, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna major in this. I don't really know what it is, but I want to be like all of you. So great. But I definitely didn't have that confidence in my identity and who I was and who I wanted to be, and accepting, you know, my space and my truth enough to feel comfortable enough to take up space
Right.
the way that you did. And I studied abroad and I did all that stuff and I had good grades or whatever, but there is definitely a level of like, you were so sure of yourself and what you were going to achieve and who you were going to be and who you were going to connect with at Villanova, just based on the story that you just told me. I know I definitely didn't have that, but I think that's awesome. And how has that looked like for you now that we've been out of
So that's what I was
college
gonna
for
say. I'm
what,
gonna be
4
like,
years?
listen.
Yeah.
Since high school, I knew my plan. I knew what I wanted to do, and then after college was a. I'm laughing because I'm like, I don't know what I even want to do like later today. Like I'm just like, I don't freaking know.
Yeah.
I don't know my plan. Like I don't know anything anymore. And I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
such a sad reality for probably like many students afterward. Like obviously like I became a nurse, and so like, but even to become a nurse was just such a struggle for me after. Like I had to do all these extra things. The semester after studying abroad, I took a medical leave of absence. And then
Mm-hmm.
I graduated in August of 2018 instead of May. For me, like put me back. And I was like, fine, like where I was meant to be, like God knows what he does. So after nursing school, because I had testing anxiety and stuff, it took me so long
Yeah.
to be able to take the NCLEX, which is the nursing license exam. And it just took forever for me, and it almost took me a year to get a freaking nursing job. And I'm just like,
Oh my
they boast
goodness.
about how it's so easy and how, yeah, everybody needs nurses, but what they don't tell you is they want an experienced nurse right off the bat. And
Yeah.
most of the time these new grad positions are filled up, and it's so competitive, especially in the Philly area. And Philly has
Oh
amazing,
yeah.
amazing hospitals, but it's so freaking competitive to get in that I don't know, like it was exactly a year that it took me to finally get a job. And for me, it took even longer because I wanted to be a maternity nurse. I did not want to do medical surgical nursing, which those are the
Right.
nurses right now that are dealing with the COVID patients, and they deal with people who have diabetes, heart disease, all of those things. And I knew that wasn't me. I knew that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do infectious disease. I didn't want to do any of those things. I was not passionate about it. And I knew that it would just be a job for me. It wouldn't be something that I'd be
Right.
happy about. So right now, as a maternity nurse, I work in a postpartum and nursery. I'm not a labor and delivery nurse. That's what I aspire to be, and possibly either a nurse practitioner or a midwife. I haven't decided yet. So right now, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
go back to school, and I don't want to like I want to do the labor and delivery, but it's just like so hard because we're understaffed, which is, I feel like something they don't tell you in nursing school, how understaffed all the hospitals are. If a perfect hospital even exists, I feel like it's exhausting all the time. They don't tell you that people, even who sign up for full time positions, after they're done orientation, everyone I've been done orientation with, I'm the only full time person right now at my job.
That's crazy.
For my position as a postpartum nurse, I'm the only full-time person. So it's really difficult for me because a lot of when one of my coworkers went on maternity leave, another one dropped her hours. I was very much the only person for a lot of my shifts. I was being
Wow.
left by myself with, I felt like, an unsafe assignment, or they were always calling the on-call person in. I have to take on-call time because we're short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always being called in as well. So I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm like,
Yeah.
and they were like, oh, like they always have this comment like, oh, the money. I'm like, I don't care about the money. I was like, my 3 days is good enough for me. Like, that's enough money for me. I don't care about the money. I care about my mental health. I was
Yeah.
like, I already know I'm underpaid here, but I love what I do. So it's just like, and I feel like that's been a struggle now where it's like I'm adulting. Like, I finally moved out of my parents' house, which was such a guilt trip to like leave them. And for me, like anyone who's a
That's a whole other episode.
yeah, like we can get into that. We could do a part 2 if you want to about that. Just being a
Yes.
child of an immigrant, because that guilt trip that you get for leaving your house is insane. Um, but I wanted to live in my own place. And I I'm here, I'm adulting, and it's just like it sucks. Honestly, adulting is not what they make it up to be. I always wanted to grow up, and now I'm like, I'm almost 25. Take me back to when it was in high
Yeah.
school. I was talking to this about with one of my line sisters, and I'm like, yo, I'm like, if I could go back, I think I'd go back to 14 when I yet was not working at the bodega. I didn't have to worry about bills. I didn't have to worry about any of these things. And my biggest stress was a test that I was gonna take the
Yo.
next week. Not know bills. Should I invest? Should I not invest? How do I get into real estate? I think I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. How do I make that happen? Like,
Yes.
like all these things. Like, and you're like, I want to travel. Like, I want to do this. How to take those kind of stress away. And
Yep.
like, I was never thinking about these things. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I want to make sure I have a retirement fund so I don't end up like my parents with no retirement. But I don't
Yeah.
want my kids to like have to depend on my children for everything. Like, I don't want to do that. How to make that happen? Do I want kids? Do I not want kids? I hate this life right now.
Yo, there's
I'm
so
like,
many
all these
questions.
questions. It's
I
just a
feel you.
struggle.
Listen, I completely understand. I go through those questions all the time. Like after graduating, it was and I don't know if this was your experience because we had similar, like we worked hard, we achieved so much, and then we got out of college and it was like, wait, what happened to that momentum? And
Yeah,
like
it's
that,
gone.
yeah,
Motivation
exactly.
is
Like
zero these days. For real.
literally like that same, not even the drive. It's not that we don't have a drive, but it was like, if I did A, I can get to B. If I did B, I can get to C. And
Yes,
that's how like the school life was set up. If I busted my ass, I would be able to get into a Villanova and have a full scholarship and have this and have that and become a nurse or become this, that, and the third, and I'll be popping. And then all of a sudden you graduate and you're like,
the
well, I
alphabet
keep
doesn't
doing A.
exist.
No, it's like I keep doing A, but it brings me to 3, and that's not even a letter. And like, where am I? What am I doing? Yeah.
Exactly. Now there is no ABC. It's just like, wait, I'm just
Right.
okay. I get paid in 2 weeks. Okay, my bills are paid. All right, I have a sort of a savings. Maybe not. I'm paying off credit card debt. I guess I won't pay my student loans because they're on hold, and Joe Biden
Right.
promised that 10K, so I'm gonna wait.
Thank you,
So
Biden.
yeah,
Please
so
come through.
I'm gonna wait. But I don't know. It's just now.
Literally.
It's just such a struggle to not to feel happy, but it's just to feel like, what am I doing with my life besides
Yeah. And
besides nursing? Because for me right now, it's just like nursing is great and all, and I already know I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So now my struggle right now is like,
yeah.
okay, what else do I want to do? And I don't know that.
Right.
I don't know that answer. And it's honestly been like just taking a toll on my mental health because I'm like, okay, well, what else do I want to do? What else am I good at? And I don't freaking know because my whole life since I was 11, all I've ever had to focus on is school and getting an
Yeah.
education. And that's done now. So what next?
hmm Yeah, like what more is there to life besides like just getting a bunch of degrees and getting a job? Like once you have all those things, then what? And I think, for kids who have backgrounds like ours, that was kind of the dream. Well, it's like you work hard, you go to school, you get your degree, you get your job, and you're set. And I think more and more people are coming to understand that that's not necessarily the case. Like there isn't anybody within our age group that I know that is like, yep, I'm doing exactly what I wanted. Like, yep, I know exactly what I want to do, and are just like feel secure in the idea of what they're doing in their life right now. So I I sympathize. I understand. I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this episode are thinking the same thing. I want to thank you for sharing your story. I know that there are going to be tons of people who are listening to this episode when it finally does air and are going to relate, just because I know the audience so far. And there are just a lot of people who are going to be like, "Yup, that's me. I did that. I feel that. I understand." And your story is beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing it with not only me but everybody who is going to be listening to this particular podcast episode.
For sure. Thanks for having me. We can have a part 2 if you want to talk later.
Absolutely. I'm so ready for part 2. We have to start looking at dates whenever you're off and not on call and have some rest.
Right. And that's the struggle right there. It's like, okay, I can't be working. I can't be on call. I can't do this.
Right.
So I feel like even finding a time sometimes to just take time for myself or make a plan. I'm like, okay, I got to make sure I didn't pick up extra. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Or I don't have something else. But we could do a child of an immigrant episode. That would be so fun.
Completely down. Let's do it. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kerlyn. Again, I appreciate the time that you gave for us today. Take care of yourself, get some rest, and I look forward to doing another episode with you. You are now listening to You Heard.